Hi, my name is Clint Macro, founder of the Trigger Pressers Union. I'm proud and honored to be able to travel the country to help educate and empower my fellow citizens in the safe and proper use of firearms. This video is about home defense fundamentals. Now, any good home defense strategy or plan is going to consider not only winning a physical encounter, but also protecting you and your family from that legal and that financial and that social and moral aftermath that is sure to follow if we have to use a firearm as a tool of last resort to defend ourselves and our loved ones in our home. The one surefire way that we can win a confrontation is to avoid it altogether. If we're able to collect and process information, we're more likely to have additional options available to us. Those options may give us the opportunity to avoid the confrontation. It may give us an opportunity to de-escalate the confrontation, or it may put us in a better tactical footing so that we can more efficiently defend our family and our loved ones. We don't recommend going through your house and clearing your home if someone breaks into your house. We recommend taking you and your family, evading and barricading in a safe area, and then defending that safe area. The only time I might consider moving through my home during a situation like this is if I need to get to where my family is. If someone is breaking into our home, the best thing for us to do first is to evade. Now, evade, what does that mean? Let's get some distance between us and the bad guy. Let's go somewhere else in the home to an area where perhaps he can't get to us. The next one is barricade. Barricade, what does that mean? Well, I suppose if you have the money to make yourself one of those safe rooms with a blast-proof steel door that drops down, that would be fantastic. Perhaps getting into another room, closing the door and locking it. That's a pretty good idea. You know, if you think about your home defense strategy, where might you barricade yourself and make yourself a safe room or a safe area? So perhaps it's your bedroom. If you have the money to do so, putting a solid core door on that bedroom and a deadbolt would be an excellent way to barricade yourself. Maybe it's going into that bedroom and putting one of those door clubs underneath of the doorknob to help make it harder to gain entrance. Whatever your way of doing this is, you want to make it harder for the bad guy to get to you. That's what barricade means. The next step is arm. You want to arm yourself with a tool of self-defense. I recommend for most people a handgun, a pistol, probably a semi-automatic without a thumb safety and 9mm, what I generally recommend, although that may not be the recommendation for every individual that I work with. You know, there's a lot of considerations that go into that. But generally, I would recommend a handgun. The reason I would generally recommend a handgun over a long gun is the handgun can be run with one hand. So I might be able to have a phone. I might be able to have a flashlight. I might be able to hold a child. I have more options, whereas with a long gun, a shotgun or a rifle, I'm most likely going to have to use two hands to be able to use that tool. So we want to arm ourselves, whether that be a pistol, whether that is a long gun, or whether that's a candlestick or a baseball bat. We want to get ourselves some tool of defense that we may use and implement if we come in contact with the bad guy. The next fundamental is communicate. Communication is key. Now, there's two aspects of communication. The first one is to get on the phone and call 911. When seconds count, police are minutes away. This is the hard truth. And this is what we accept when we arm ourselves to become our own family first responder. With that said, if there's any way possible, I can buy police those moments, those minutes, so that they can do their job, and maybe I don't have to shoot a bad guy in my house, well, that's probably a win-win for everybody. Definitely for me and my family. So we want to get 911 on the phone. Now, part of your kit that you keep in your safe room or that you should have on you is your cell phone. Most of us have cell phones these days. That's pretty easy. But did you know that those old cell phones, that shoebox full of old flip phones that you still have, If they can hold a charge, they can still call 911, even if they don't have a plan attached to them. So perhaps if you go through your old junk drawer, you can put a cell phone in each one of your rooms in the house so you have the ability to communicate with people outside, especially calling that 911. Now there's another aspect of communicate. You may communicate with the bad guy. Now I wouldn't do that just as a matter of course, but if you've evaded and barricaded yourself into a safe area and that bad guy is now beating on that door or trying to gain entrance to that door, if he knows that you are in that door or you have no other means of escape from that area, then letting that bad guy know that you are armed and intend to defend yourself might be a prudent thing to do. It may de-escalate the situation, and having that recorded on the 911 phone call potentially could aid you in your defense later on. So saying, hey, if they're trying to get through the door, hey, I'm back here, if you come in, I'll defend myself. That may give them also an opportunity to identify themselves. There are plenty of stories where next door neighbors broke into the house thinking that their wife had changed a lock on them. They were drinking a little bit. Or maybe it was a boyfriend of a daughter that was going around through the house. They were sneaking around doing some stuff that the parents maybe weren't privy to. Giving that opportunity for the bad guy to potentially identify themselves. Maybe they're not a bad guy. That might be a situation that saves some lives. Now the 911 call is crucial. We need to get 911 on the horn, get those police on their way so that they can do their job as quickly as possible. But keep in mind, we need to arm ourselves and ready ourselves to defend our family first. If I'm calling 911 and a bad guy breaks through that door, I'm probably not going to be able to poke his eye out with the cell phone. I need to arm myself and ready myself to defend first, then get 911 on the phone. Now, a well thought out strategy involving different members of the family, perhaps 911 could be called by someone else simultaneously while you're retrieving your firearm and readying yourself to defend. These are all things that need to be considered when developing that home defense strategy. Now, the last one is to respond. Respond appropriately. Shooting the gun may not be the appropriate response. Maybe just arming yourself, guarding that door, and waiting for the police to arrive. That might be the proper response. If the bad guy breaks through that door, then using the firearm might be reasonable. Let's discuss one more aspect of barricade. When we barricade ourselves into that safe area, we want to be 90 degrees off of the point of entrance. So for instance, if the room is like this, let's say this is 90 degrees, right? And my doorway is here. Well, rather than be here to where the bad guy is coming straight through the door at me, I should be over here, 90 degrees off of the point of entrance. 90 degrees off to the point of entrance gives us the opportunity to see more information and collect more information. Also, if the bad guy breaks through that door, he's probably going to overpenetrate, which means that he's going to put himself more into this room and we'll have a better opportunity to defend ourselves as opposed to have to grapple or wrestle with a bad guy breaking through that door. Now, when you're looking at your home defense strategy, I implore you to figure out where that 90-degree advantage point is and then scrutinize, what is this wall made of? What's behind that wall? Because it's important to recognize that projectiles, if you miss, could quite possibly go through that wall into the next room or out of the house and maybe into the neighbor's house. So you want to make sure that you're aware of what the backstop is. So perhaps you have a hillside behind here. Well, that might be a good idea. If there's the neighbor's house behind there, well then you might need to change your room around so you're maybe coming from this 90-degree angle, this way. Or perhaps you put a bunch of bookshelves up against that wall to give it some type of ballistic backstop. These are all the things that we talk about, discuss, and consider in the Fundamentals of Home Defense class. Now let's discuss the safety rules. The rules we use in the ICE Fundamentals of Home Defense and in the USCCA Defensive Shooting Fundamentals courses are like this. Number 1, keep the gun pointed in a generally safe direction whenever possible. Recognize that as you move around a home, you move around a public environment, that safe direction is not as easily defined as it is on, say, a square range or at your sportsman's club. Number 2, keep your finger somewhere other than the trigger until you are ready to shoot. You've positively identified your target and made the conscious decision, yes, I'm going to put a hole into that target. Keep your finger high above the trigger guard when you're not ready to shoot. Find that ridge where the slide and frame meet. That's a good tactile place that you can consistently place your finger. So your finger is either here or it's on the trigger when you're ready to shoot. It's not just enough to keep your finger off the trigger. You want to keep it high, because if you're startled when you're holding on to something, it's very likely that your whole hand is going to clench. So we want to make sure that if that happens, our finger is here so we don't accidentally touch that trigger. The third rule is the big picture rule. You are in control of a firearm. If you use that firearm negligently or carelessly or with malice, you have the potential to harm yourself or kill yourself or somebody else. Again, you are in control of a firearm. If you use that firearm negligently, carelessly, or with malice, you have the potential to harm or kill yourself or somebody else. So keep that in mind every time you pick up a firearm. And also keep in mind, it's not the object, it's the operator. Storage and staging. Now, it's universally accepted that all guns that aren't being used should be locked up. They should be stored unloaded and separately from the ammunition. Storing firearms in a safe is really the best way to do that, to keep it inaccessible to unauthorized personnel. Now, if you're talking about a tool of self-defense, something that you are actually using, because remember, use doesn't really necessarily mean bang, bang, bang. Use might mean the gun that I keep on my holster. It's loaded, it's in my holster, it's in my direct control, but I'm not making it go bang, but I'm still using it as a tool of self-defense. You might stage a firearm in your home. How you stage or store your gun is really going to depend upon your lifestyle. It's going to depend upon who in your house may or may not be authorized to gain access to that firearm. And you also should consider the laws and regulations, any local laws or state laws that dictate how a gun may or may not be stored. If a gun is staged, it might be appropriate for that gun to be loaded. Now, there's a couple different conditions a gun could be in. It could be completely unloaded, meaning there's no ammo in the gun whatsoever. So perhaps the gun is in the box with the slide locked open and the magazines are placed in the box with it. That might be one way. Another way might be with the gun with the slide locked open and a magazine inside of the gun. So when you pick the gun up, you tap rack and get the gun into a loaded condition. Another way that is the most efficient way is to have the gun actually loaded with a round in the chamber. But if that is the case, it absolutely must have the trigger guard covered. So whether that be in a holster or whether it have a trigger tether, that trigger guard must be covered so that you don't inadvertently press the trigger when you reach in to grab the gun out of that box. So that is a must. If the gun is loaded in a locked, secured box, the trigger guard must be covered. If you have a box that has to have a combination lock or a bunch of keys that you have to get into, you're probably going to have difficulty getting into that in the middle of the night with your glasses off when you're half asleep. So something that has a RFID, like this, I have a bracelet here. If I rub my bracelet across the storage box, the box will open up. Thumbprint technology is pretty cool, although the thumbprints technology is not the most reliable at this point. Any of you guys have an iPhone probably have experienced where it didn't quite read your thumb right away. Perhaps it's a lockbox that requires some simple digits that have to be pushed or some buttons. There's many products out there on the market and some really stout boxes that hold the gun securely. You can bolt it to the wall, but you can get into it pretty quickly. So I know plenty of people that go to the range and practice, but how often do you take your gun box to the range and practice getting into that box, then retrieving the firearm and then shooting? So it's important that we practice that as well. Keep in mind, if we have to get into that box, we're probably going to be under a little bit of stress. And under stress, the brain kind of does crazy stuff. So we want to have some more reps at retrieving the firearm. What is your home defense plan? What is your strategy? Do you know what you're going to do if someone kicks down that front door or if they try to break into the back door? What if you're home alone? What if your family is home? These are all things that you need to ask yourself. As morbid as it may sound, you need to put yourself in the situation in your mind. Think of all the bad things that could happen and come up with a plan that you would use to respond to those situations. The body can't go where the mind hasn't been, so we need to visualize and think through these situations. If this happened, I would do this. And walk through that plan. Go through it mentally, then perhaps walk through it slow, step by step. Count the steps to get to your safe room. Count the steps to get to your gun box. Once you do that, if it's possible, involve the whole family in a full-on fire drill. That would be ultimately the best thing to do. But I will say a lot of people have really well thought out plans, but they don't share them with their family. And if that's the case, that plan is no good. You have to share it with your family and let them know what you expect them to do in case someone does try to break into your home. One thing about your home defense strategy is there's a lot of things that we can build in, infrastructure that can help us to respond in a situation where we might need to defend ourselves. Out and about, it's kind of a level playing field out in public, in the streets, walking down the sidewalk. But at home, we can put in alarm systems. We can put in motion sensors. We can put in lights that pop on when someone walks around the corner. Perhaps we have a dog. We have an animal that can smell or hear things before we do. All these things we can put in place to help us to buy some time or alert us to what's going on so that we can potentially respond as opposed to react. Keep in mind, all day long we have our head on a swivel and they say to live in condition yellow when you're armed. That's prudent and responsible. However, at home, at some point in time, you're going to sleep. And unless you sleep with one eye open or you and your wife have shifts and one does fire watch while you catch some Z's, you're going to be asleep at some time. You're going to be in condition white or unaware. That's okay. That's just part of being a human being. But at home, perhaps we can put in infrastructure that's going to aid us in those situations when we are truly unaware. This camera is being run remotely, and I'm going to be using UTMs, Ultimate Training Munitions, which are non-lethal training ammunition that we use in training. There has to be certain safety protocols in place when we do use the UTMs. However, it does give me the ability to shoot in this facility right now without the need of a live fire range. One of the safety protocols is that I purge the room of ammunition and I made sure that there are no working firearms in this room. Every gun that's in here has been converted to use these UTMs. As you can see, I've got my eye protection on. I don't need to wear ear protection with these training devices. I also have a SIRT pistol. The SIRT pistol, shot indicating resetting trigger. That's what SIRT stands for. This is a laser device that there's no way to put ammunition in this gun, and I recommend anyone that wants to be their own family first responder invest in purchasing one of these tools. What it does is it shows you your shot placement and the trigger resets like a real gun, but it shoots a laser. It gives you great flexibility in your home to be able to train every single day. Highly recommend using the SIRT pistol. We want to practice in as much context as possible. So if you keep your firearm staged in a locked box, you want to take that box to the range, get some reps at opening that box, defeating whatever device is that keeps it secure. Retrieve the firearm from that box and incorporate that into your live fire training. One disadvantage of running a long gun is you're going to need to use both hands to be able to run the gun. Now certainly with an AR-15 there's lots of things that you can add on to the gun to aid with illumination or even having a tertiary aiming device such as a laser on the rifle. But keep in mind you're going to need two hands to run it. Once you retrieve your firearm from its locked box, we recommend that you bring the gun into a high compressed ready position. This ready position is preferred for many reasons, but one of them is it allows for very efficient presentation. So what does the high compress ready position look like? Well, the gun is at your center index, at your high center chest. So basically from the collarbone down to the diaphragm in line with the head. The muzzle is at or below the line of sight. So those of you that are trained that do the kind of Sewell position thing, that's totally cool. Your shoulders are relaxed, your arms are at their side. Keep in mind, under the stress of a dynamic critical incident, our brain may not allow us to use our sights, or it might be dark, we might not be able to see them. Or we might not want to invest the extra time it takes to get perfect sight picture sight alignment. So what we found through training lots and lots of people, most folks can get hits on the high center chest in 9 to 15 foot distance range without use of sights. So simply we want to bring the gun parallel and into our line of sight, with both hands on the gun, keeping both eyes focused on the target, reaching full extension, getting those arms to full extension. So arms in front of shoulders and getting those shoulders engaged. Getting our head down in the triangle. Now this sounds pretty complex and complicated, but it's actually very simple, and you were born with this ability. Any of you guys that have children or been around children, what does the baby do when he wants his bottle? He looks at the bottle, both eyes focused on the bottle, and with both arms parallel and into his line of sight, he reaches full extension and goes, ah, ah. Well, there you have it. That is really what we're doing here with this type of presentation. So using the SIRT pistol, both eyes fixed on the target, extend the gun parallel and into the line of sight, touch trigger and press. Keep both eyes open, focused at the target. We want to fully extend the gun parallel and into our line of sight. Reach full extension. Once we get the full extension, we feel that is our stimulus to then touch the trigger. Now touch doesn't mean make it go bang, but here's where we would make any sighting adjustments if we were to use our sights. Then we press. We want to press smoothly and continuously. Reset the trigger, take the finger off of the trigger, come back to the high compress ready position. We want that stimulus of full extension to be our response to that to be touch trigger. And then from there we press smoothly and continuously. Now that could be a slow press, that could be a fast press. We want to make sure that that press is continuous. If you feel yourself staging, meaning going or if you're hitting that hard spot and then breaking the shot, we want you to press straight through that, make that smooth and continuous. So with both eyes open, focus on the target, extend the gun parallel and into your line of sight, touch trigger and press. Reset the trigger, come back to the high compress ready position. I'll do that for a few times. Don't want to spend a whole lot of time doing that until we start to see that we're getting hits in the high center chest. Then we want to get into the habit of shooting multiple shots. So how many licks does it take to get to a center of a Tootsie Roll Tootsie Pop? Well, the world may never know. I suppose if you're an owl and you cheat and bite after 3, that's the answer. But we don't really know how many shots it's going to take to stop that bad guy from attacking us or harming our family. The only stimulus we're going to receive that tells us to stop our defense is that that attack has ceased. So on the range, when you practice, you want to visualize that that attacker has fallen down, maybe turned tail, went the other direction. Perhaps they've expired. Maybe they surrender. Visualize something different each time and then let that be your stimulus to tell you to stop your string of fire on the range. Another item that you might have in your safe room is a medical kit. Medical kit should contain at minimum a tourniquet and some type of compression bandage. I'm a big fan of the Israeli bandage or emergency bandage. You could also have chest seals and some type of hemostatic gauze, something that if you put it into a wound, it helps promote clotting. If you'd like to learn more about how to use the contents of a basic med kit, go to a Stop the Bleed class, or the United States Concealed Carry Association has the Emergency First Aid Fundamentals. I'm certified to teach that, but there's also an online class for that. And there's also a great video on Personal Defense Network by Caleb Causey that tells us how to use these items in this med kit. But really and honestly, it may seem complex and difficult, but it really doesn't take a whole lot of training to be able to confidently employ the tools of a medical kit. Check out my website, triggerpressersunion.com. If you go to the schedule page, you can see my most up-to-date schedule, and I'm pretty sure if you go in there today, you're going to find some of these home defense classes already on the calendar. Also, if you go to the library page, you can see other content that I've produced, whether it be videos or articles, and you can read those and they can be part of your educational experience. Also, go to YouTube and check out Meet the Pressers. Meet the Pressers with Matt Mallory and me. That's our internet show. It's on YouTube. We have a show out at least once a week, and there it's a safe place for trigger pressers to talk about training, guns, gear, gadget, personal defense, and political activism. So check that out on YouTube. This is Clint Macro with the Trigger Pressers Union. Stay healthy, stay armed, and be well regulated.